Hello. Hello, everyone. My name is Sasha, and I'm here representing CEEA Animation. And I am happy to welcome you in another episode of CEEA Animation Experience, which is our monthly webinars where we explore different topics relevant to the animation industry. And today we are super happy to present one important topic in collaboration with our partners from Ecoprod. Here, let me introduce you Alissa Aubenque, Head of Operations and International in Ecoprod, and Adrien Roche, who is International Project Manager, also from Ecoprod. And there will be today telling us interesting things about the Green Animation Guide and how to reduce the environmental impact of the animation industry. Probably if you are following us, you know what is the protocol. You are very welcome to listen, to join us for the next hour. And if you will have any questions, please put them in the chat. And we will take some minutes we will make some minutes in the end for your questions and have a discussion, hopefully. And also, as per usual, we will make a recording of this lecture and it will be available on our website later for you to check it out. So we will have the time to return to it. So welcome, Alissa, and welcome, Adrien. It's a pleasure to host you on this hot summer day with this interesting topic. So I will just invite you that the floor is yours, and I will join you in the end for the questions and discussion. Welcome.
Thank you, Sasha. Hello, and thank you for joining us today. We're going to talk about green animation. So as Sasha said, I'm Alissa. I work at Ecoprod with my colleague Adrien. Well, we're really happy to present to you our latest tool, which is the Green Animation Guide that we released in ANSI a few days ago. This is a collaborative project that we did with different European partners, including CEEA Animation, but also different regional film funds and commissions, also with Cine Regio and with Green Film, which is a sustainability initiative. For the webinar, we're going to walk you through first what is Ecoprod. Then we'll talk a bit about the impact of the animation industry. Then we'll dive into the Green Animation Guide to give you practical advice on how to understand and reduce the impact of the animation production workflow. We'll have a short focus also on AI, because we know that this is a rising topic for the industry, which has an immense, huge environmental impact. And then we'll tell you a bit more about our next steps on the topic of animation. Of course, if you have any questions, as Sasha said, you can write them down in the chat and we'll have some time at the end to answer them. So a few words about Ecoprod. Ecoprod is a sustainability initiative based in France. We've been operating since 2009. We are a non-profit association. We have over 450 members, which are mainly production companies, broadcasters, but also institutions, film schools, and service providers. So we cover the area of live action, documentary, animation, advertising, and also audio and radio. Our goal is to promote sustainability in the film and TV industry. And to do that, we have released a number of tools that are available for free on our website, ecoprod.com. We have a carbon measurement tool, which is called Carbon Club. We have a green production guide, the Ecoprod label, which is a certification for live action productions. We also have released a new project called StepUP, which we have released with Eurimages and the Council of Europe. And we release numbers of guides every year. So the idea of the guide is to always make people understand the impact of a specific topic. So we, for example, we have released a guide on outdoor shootings, but then our main focus is giving you practical advice on how to reduce this impact. So as I said, we launched an initiative a few months ago that could be interesting for you as well, which is called StepUP. It's a European platform, which is, first of all, an e-learning platform. So you will find different e-learning courses on this platform. And we also have a collaborative map of green production, where you can access country fact sheets, and so you can see what is happening in terms of green production and sustainability in our industry in the different countries. So we'll leave the link for you so that you can check it out. A few years ago, we realized that the topic of green production has been really focusing on live action production for the last 10 to 15 years, and that there was a real lack of tools and knowledge about the impact of animation, of the animation industry. So a few years ago, we started working on this topic, and we started with those 3 assumptions, which were that the animation production has an environmental footprint. We lack specific tools and data for the animation industry. And in a globalized sector that relies on co-productions, we need unified standards and international collaborations. So what we decided to do 1 year ago approximately is that we launched an international working group with the partners that I already mentioned. And we have 3 different goals. The first one is to foster collaboration through a network dedicated to promoting sustainability in the animation industry. Then the second goal is to create common tools to share best practices to reduce the environmental footprint and the environmental impact of animation. And then the third goal is to agree on common standards and progress towards a harmonized international certification scheme. We truly believe that the environmental transition will be only working if we do this all together. So this is a very collaborative European project. We started last year in the summer. We have been, our first mission or our first goal was to launch a survey, which we launched in October. We then went to Animar in Barcelona to present the project and discuss with industry stakeholders. Then we started working on the development of the Green Animation Guide, which we'll present today. And we also had the chance to attend the CEEA Animation Convention in March in Slovenia to discuss how to also be mindful of including all kinds of territories and the different production capacities into green animation standards. In June, we released the guide at Annecy. So the first phase of this international project is now closed, and we are now stepping into the second phase, which is establishing international common standards for green animation.
So now I will present you the challenges for animation in the face of climate change. So how our industry is going through the environmental transition. So first we have to understand that this transition is a global transition. So is concerned by many changes, not just environmental but also social, which have been identified in 2015 by the United Nations through a universal framework. These are the 17 goals to transform our world. So several goals affect us directly as an industry. For example, there is like the 7th goal about affordable and clean energy. We know that the animation industry is relies a lot on energy, so this is a very important topic for us. There is also the 9th goal, which is about industry, innovation, and infrastructure. So, for example, the integration of sustainable technology in facilities is important for production offices. And maybe also the 12th goal about responsible consumption and production, so about, for example, waste reduction. So these goals affect us directly as individuals and as professionals. So there are, we can identify two stakes for our industry. The first stake is about impact reduction. So there is the carbon emissions reduction, but there is not only carbon that we have to focus on. There is also waste reduction, as we mentioned before, but also the impact on our biodiversity and the consumption of natural resources, for example, through the hardware that we use that are very intensive in terms of material extraction. And these resources are limited, so we have to reduce this extraction. And then the second maybe stake that we can identify is how can we adapt to environmental changes. For example, if we think about energy that we mentioned before, we know that energy tends to be scarce and the prices might be rising, so it will also affect the production method. So we really need to adapt now. So these challenges will affect us in many different ways, maybe, for example, at the European level and legislative level. For example, there is the EU Green Deal that calls for all economic sector to contribute to climate neutrality through, for example, regulations. We can think about ESG reporting or CSRD. There are also national and industry stakeholders that are implementing new rules and regulations. For example, in France, since this year, we've had a regulation for animation industry about mandatory carbon calculation, but there are also different kinds of incentives or regulations in different countries, for example, for live action, such as green bonuses. And we can believe that in the future, public subsidies will be conditioned to the respect of the environmental criteria. And then in the end, as we said before, there is the scarcity of resources that will really affect us in a very direct way and will have an impact on our budgets. So maybe before we start presenting the guide, a few key figures to understand the impact of animation, because we are very often unaware of the environmental impact of digital technologies, maybe less than, for example, if you compare to film production, the impact that can have on a film set. But the film industry is particularly affected by this impact. So we have an interesting figure here, which is that digital emissions will represent 8% of humanity's total emission in 2040. So of course, this is not just animation, but digital emission in general, as our use of digital tends to increase. At the moment, it is 4%. And then maybe a few other interesting figures to have a framework. So about global data storage, it is accounting today for approximately 1% of global energy consumption, and also it will tend to increase. We know from carbon calculation that we did with studios in different countries that a single animated feature film can generate several hundred tons of CO2. And most of these emissions are due to rendering and data storage. And for example, if we render a single frame in high resolution, it can consume as much energy as charging a smartphone 300 times. So now we have that we have these figures in mind. Let's focus on digital technology. I think it's very interesting because on this specific topic, we have an enormous leverage. We know that we can reduce our impact. For example, if we change a few habits, for example, going through meat-based meals to vegetarian meals, there is a 1:10 ratio. Or for example, if we switch from car to train. So these are really important impact reductions. But on digital technology, there is a different kind of reduction, which is very interesting. Here are two examples. For example, there is the optimization of codes on programs. We know that we can make these programs more efficient. For example, a program, when being more efficient, can be 60 times faster in the first example, or 400 million times faster, which is really a lot. But we have to beware of something, which is the rebound effect with this kind of reduction. It means that when we improve the energy efficiency, it tends to lead to increased consumption, and then it offsets the benefits. So our industry is really prone to this rebound effect. So we have to keep this in mind for the future. So now we will present you the need for a green animation guide. So because beyond measurements, we need concrete actions from everyone. So this is the reason we developed this guide, which is here. We have, as Alissa said before, it's available online for free, but we also have physical versions of this guide. And I really invite you to print it and share it among your teams. So this guide is included in the 3-step strategy. The first important thing that we have is to measure our impact. So measure our carbon emissions. Today, there are not many tools dedicated to the measurement of carbon emissions in the field of animation. And we have one in France, which is called the Carbulator. It's also an international tool, so feel free to use it. And it's very interesting because we can then estimate our emissions and realize where our impact is. And then the second aspect is reduction. So this is the guide because we need guidelines, and we need also advice on how to reduce our practices. And then there is the third step, which is certification. And this is what we will present you in the end, the creation of unified certification standards. So now let's present you the guide. This is what we are here for today. So this guide is a tool made to equip professionals worldwide. It's an international guide, and we really try to make it dedicated to the different kinds of practices we can have depending on the countries, because we know that animation is a very globalized industry. So this international guide is based on the 2023 French guide, which was also released in ANC. And to make it more international, we interviewed and conducted studies among different countries and over 50 professionals. We gave special attention to cross-border collaboration. With this guide, we try to provide a clear and actionable recommendation for reducing the footprints and to promote ethical works practices within the animation industry. So you can see on the right side of the screen how the sheets look like. Yes. So the guide structure. There is an introduction. So in this introduction, we developed a few key concepts essential to understand how we can reduce our impacts. And then we gave a few practical entry points for action. So these concern, for example, training or governance or strategy for companies. And then you can find help to navigate the guide depending on who you are and what your position is in a studio. And of course, we did a spotlight on AI that we will present later. So the content is divided in 6 different parts. The first part is buildings and offices, then studio infrastructure, workflows, food and catering, transportation, and finally, merchandising and content. There is a QR code also here. You can scan it with your phone if you want to check it now. So this guide is for basically everyone working in the value chain of animated film. This is for studio operations, but also IT for production and for logistics, HR, catering, and also people working in marketing and also creative. But this is also relevant for CSR, educators, and public funders across the animation industry. So the first part is buildings and offices. This is a very important part in the process of film creation, because these movies are basically made in offices. So we based this part on 3 pillars for long-term impact. The first is about construction and rehabilitation, because studios are often used over long periods. According to the European Commission, if we improve material efficiency alone, we could reduce emissions from the building sector up to 80%. So these the changes that can be made in studios can be feasible and impactful. Then there is the energy performance aspect. So this is about heating optimization, cooling, and lighting system. It also, of course, depends on the energy mix that you have, the country you are producing in. But this is a very important aspect for an industry relying on energy consumption. And then there is the everyday office activities. So these are smaller actions, but still they are very impactful for the teams. They are such as, for example, printing, waste sorting, and water use. They can be measurable operational benefits. The second aspect we developed is a studio infrastructure. So this is a major impact source also in animation. It's equipment. So maybe two aspects that we can shed light on is first optimization, as we said before. Using the right tool for the right operations is a very important aspect to avoid over-specification by matching hardware to real production needs. For example, if you work on 2D or 3D, and then prioritize reuse, repair, and leasing over systematic renewal, which seems to be easier, but has a very huge environmental impact. And then there is a strategic governance aspect, because of course the goal is not a perfect setup, but it's an agile one. So appointing a grid IT lead to lead infrastructure choice can have a major impact, because then you will be able to extend device lifespan and optimize energy and cooling management. The third sheet is workflows and production practices. So this is a very interesting aspect, because we work in a creative industry, and I think that for this there is a very interesting creative aspect on the way that we can think our habits, we can think our production methods and change them through several techniques. For example, there is a smart asset use, reusing models, textures, and scenes. Also question the need to produce new assets and simplify and avoid over-detailed or unnecessary content. So this is about being creative and efficient, both at the same time. There is also the whole aspect about controlling software energy use. So you can monitor your energy profiles. In this guide, you will find different tools available to do so. Also adjust settings and deactivate the unused functions to limit electricity consumption during production. And then there is the whole data management efficiency. This is a very technical but also very interesting aspect. So this is about, for example, versioning and also naming and storage to avoid duplication and excess. So use your files efficiently. And for example, you can adopt universal formats such as USD to streamline exchange and reduce processing. We also made a small focus on real-time rendering, because we know that it's a very important change in the practices today. It can be impactful in terms of environmental impact reduction, but it really depends on the use you make of it. We have to stay aware that real-time should demand high GPU power and frequent hardware upgrades, which can lead to energy use increase and embodied emissions. I go back to what we said before about the rebound effect. We did a whole part on GPU and the impact it has on material extraction. So basically, the advice that we gave here is to use real-time tools selectively based on energy benchmarks and production needs. So this is more of a strategic decision that we have to make at the studio level with clear governance and team awareness to prevent unnecessary impacts. And then there is the transportation part. So of course, transportation is a major impact for a studio. We realized it by conducted studies. Several studios calculated their carbon emissions, and on the right side of the screen you can see that, for example, flights have a major impact, but also individual cars have an impact, and you can really reduce this impact, for example, by carpooling. It really decreases. So first, what's important is to identify the high impact travel patterns. But this can be, for example, day-to-day commuting to the studio, but also international transportations when moving from festival to another. So this is not about using the train or electric cars, but it is about identify the pattern level, the patterns you have for transportation, and try to use the most efficient way for transportation. And the last part is about content and merchandising. So these are a little bit two different aspects. The first part on content can be divided in three different aspects. The first, I think is the most important one, is about training artists and also producers to raise awareness on how creative choices can shape perception, because as a creative industry, we have basically two impacts, the one on the content and the one which is the direct impact that the production has. So basically everything that we mentioned before. We identified different trainings around the world that you can train your team with. Then there is in the content itself the story aspect. So how to shift your presentation, so integrate ecological themes and dilemmas related to sustainability into narratives. There is also a big aspect on normalization of sustainable behavior through subtle and non-moralizing inclusion. And also, of course, make it visible on screen. So how to feature the living world, biodiversity, ecosystems. We have very good example with movies that went out recently. And how to include, for example, non-human perspectives and thinking about the movie flow, of course. And yes, here we have three interesting questions that have been developed by L'Écran d'Après, which is an initiative for sustainability in the film industry. So, for example, you can ask yourself what kind of world is depicted, what motivates the characters, and how is nature represented. So by thinking like this, you can really change the way you influence perspectives for the public. So finally, short focus on AI, because this is a high priority topic. So of course, what we identify today is the lack of studies and the fact that AI changes very rapidly. And our uses also change. This is not just generative AI, but there is the whole aspect that we have to include. So we made a definition of the few impacts that AI can have. So for example, there is the impact on training, but also on inference, which is day-to-day use. Also, we noticed that this impact depends on the hardware that you use, but especially GPUs, as we said before, that they are really intensive in terms of material extraction and energy use. But using AI can reduce workloads, but also shift emissions and create a rebound effects. So we identified a few practical actions. The first action is to deploy strategically. So have a strategy at the studio level, and then limit the environmental impact through, for example, low carbon infrastructure, reducing model size and iterations, and monitor your emissions. Then it's not just on the environmental impact, but maybe a broader impact which concerns the ethical and legal use. So you have to establish internal clear guidelines, respect copyright, of course, and follow regulations. And you have to communicate transparently with your teams, but also with your partners, your stakeholders, about how AI is used in the production pipeline. So here are 8 very detailed practical entry points for action. Maybe we can move on, but these are accessible in the guide, but this is basically on training and monitoring your intensity and having a strategy.
So Adrien told you a bit about the guide and all the things that you need to take into account when you talk about and you think about green animation. Of course, this is a lot of information, so we really invite you to download the guide and to read into the different topics that could be interesting for you. We will go through the 8 points because those are the very practical things that we want you to have in mind when leaving this webinar. So the first thing is that sustainability as a whole, and especially in the animation industry, it's a very complex topic. Things are changing a lot. So what we really recommend is to get a training to really get everyone in your team on board, have the same knowledge level, understand the impacts, the stakes also that we have in our industry. And once we understand the impact and we understand how to navigate this topic of sustainability, then you will see that you will also have the knowledge to reduce your impact, because every production company, every studio, every project is different. So training really gives you more of an understanding of the topic, and then you can act by yourself depending on where you are in the world and also what your priorities are. The second step is to measure, then reduce. So this is something that we usually talk about in environmental transition, is to reduce our impact. We first need to understand it. So this is why different carbon calculators have been developed. As we said before, most of the industry calculators are mainly thought for the live action industry, but we had the release of Carbolator, which is an animation specific tool a few months ago. So this could be something that you could start looking into to measure the impact of your studio or your company, to understand where the impacts are, and then see where you need to highlight your efforts to reduce this environmental impact. The third step is to build internal governance. The environmental transition will not be done by overnight, and it will not be done alone. So we really need to do this as a collaborative and long-term effort. So this is why we recommend that you build a group of people that are interested in this topic in your company, or if you're working on a project, that you find people on the project that are interested in this topic, and that you define a governance so that you see who has knowledge about which topic, who can act on the big decisions, and then start building a roadmap from that, and then track progress also over time, help each other in a collaborative effort, and learn from your mistakes and go from one step to the other. The third thing would be to invest in the transition. We know that sustainability can sometimes cost a bit more, especially when you need to rethink your infrastructure, your studio infrastructure. There are some investments to be done, but over time, this will also lead to a lot of savings, especially in terms of energy, but also in terms of purchasing less. If you invest in higher quality material, then you will need less renewal of these equipments. So we recommend that you put aside a budget for sustainability measures, depending, of course, on what you can invest, and also the size of your studio or project. Then we go into the actual topics that you need to focus on. As you've seen with Adrien, there's a lot of different topics, but the main topics are, I think, energy and digital sobriety. So on energy, we recommend that you understand which equipment, which workflows have the biggest energy intensity in your studio, in your project. For that, you have different tools that are listed in the guide that can help you understand where you are actually using and consuming energy. And so once you understand where you are using the most energy, you can start reducing that energy by rethinking your workflows and opting for more energy efficient equipment. And then, of course, you also need to think about where your energy comes from. So in some countries, energy is very low carbon. For example, in France, we have nuclear energy, so it's low carbon. But in other countries, energy from the grid can be very high carbon intensive because it relies on coal, for example. So we recommend that you really look into how your energy infrastructures in your country, and then look for alternatives. If you can find a green energy provider, or if you can invest in renewables for your own studio, that could be something to look into. So on the energy side, there's really two things. It's lowering your energy need, and then it's looking at where you get your energy from and choosing low carbon suppliers. Then the second big aspect on which to act is digital sobriety. When we look at the impact of the technology and digital industry, Adrien said that it's today 4% of world emissions are linked to digital technologies, and it's going to go up to 8%. So when we look a bit deeper into this impact, the main impact of digital technology is actually the hardware. So it's all the equipment, the servers, the computers, the cables that we use that need to be built, that need a lot of different resources, a lot of different rare metals that have both a carbon footprint, but also a big impact on biodiversity, because as you might know, to get all the metals for our computers, our smartphones, we need to dig into the earth, basically, and so this leads to a lot of destruction and pollution. So this is the other thing that you need to keep in mind, is to adopt digital sobriety. So to optimize IT use, look at the equipment that you have, think about how you can extend the lifespan. We have different studios here that we work with that, for example, do rotation. So they use the high power equipment for the most intensive activities, for example, for rendering. And then once the equipment is less efficient, they use it for other activities. So of course, this goes hand in hand with also economic sobriety, because the longer you use your equipment, the less you need to reinvest in new equipment. The seventh step is to think systematically. So the world is changing a lot, especially with AI, our practices are changing. So when we think about sustainability, we also need to anticipate future shifts in energy, IT, and materials, and to stay aware of every new tool, every new workflow that comes into our industry, to think about what it means in terms of environmental sustainability, but also in the long term in terms of economic and social sustainability. And then the last advice that we would give is to communicate with integrity. We really want to push you to commit to sustainability and to start acting and to start putting actions into place to reduce the impact of your project or studio, and to also reach out to other studios and other companies and other initiatives that are into this topic of sustainability. But of course, it's important also to have in mind that we need to avoid greenwashing. So it's not about telling the world that you are the greenest and the best environmental sustainable studio if you haven't actually reduced your impact. So it's really about working on an actual reduction and making things better from one day, from 1 year to the other, because as I said, sustainability will not happen overnight. So this is an ongoing progress. This leads us to our last section. As I mentioned in the introduction, we work with the different stakeholders of the industry to first release this guide. And now the second step of this working group is to work on common international standards. We have the same focus as I said at the beginning. The animation production has an environmental footprint. We lack the specific tools and data for the animation industry. And we really think that we need to find a unified way of working on the impact of the animation industry. So this is why we decided to work on unified standards. This means that we want to list the actions that we need to take to say, I am a green studio, for example, or I am a sustainable film, a sustainable series. Because if once we have a unified standard and a common definition, then we can avoid greenwashing and we can actually measure our progress and see how we stand in the industry. The idea of these unified standards is to take the whole industry with us. So it's also about being aware that a big studio will not have the same capacity or will have more capacity to invest, for example, in new technology than a smaller studio. We also realize that there are very different ways of looking at sustainability depending on where you are based in the world. So the idea of the standards are really to take that into account and to have a holistic approach to sustainability. It's a very bottom-up initiative, so this means that we are working with various studios in different countries. We work very closely with also initiatives like Animation Europe or CEEA Animation, of course, to so that the standards that we develop are also applicable in real life. The standards will be a voluntary commitment, so this means that we will release the actions, and everyone can use it to follow a sustainability roadmap. But it could be also in the longer term used by film funds to implement sustainability measures and also become a certification, which would mean that you will not only implement the actions, but somebody would actually come and check if you have done what you claim to do. And what we also believe in is that we need to be, as an industry, we need the rules to come from our industry, from ourselves, because if we are not taking the subject seriously and if we are not working on this topic, others will apply rules to us. Others can be governments, but also bigger studios like US studios. So the idea is really to be at the forefront, work on these standards together, and so for the timeline, so we are starting working on these standards this summer. We'll be working with different animation experts and different sustainability experts, and we hope to have a first draft of the standards by the end of the year. These will then go into a beta version. So we will be testing the standards with a round of European studios to see if they match the reality, if we have the knowledge and the resources to actually implement the actions. So this will be early 2026. We will, of course, be then calling out to the industry to have studios joining this beta testing. And then once this testing is conclusive and we have standards that work for the different, for the whole industry, then we will be releasing the standards officially and hope that they will be adopted by the industry. If you think that this is useful and important, we invite you to sign the Statement for European Sustainability Standards in Animation. It's a statement that we launched in ANSI with different stakeholders, and the goal is really to show that our industry is ready for the environmental transition and that we want to do this together and that we want this to be a bottom-up approach. So again, if you think this is relevant and important, then we invite you to sign that statement. We'll give you the link right after. And if you want to take it even further, you can also contact us to join the working group and be a more active member of this project. Yes, this leads us to the end of this webinar. You have the QR code to download the guide and also the QR code to sign the Statement for European Sustainability Standards in Animation. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alissa and Adrien. It was very, very nice presentation and one that we needed for a long time. So maybe we still have around 10 to 15 minutes left, but maybe we first see about the questions from our audience. Now is the time. I see that we have with us around 40 people watching. So if you have a question, now is the time for Alissa and Adrien. And let's see about the two that are already there that I saw. First one was by Irene, and she's asking if you're maybe collaborating also with the Green Producers Club in the Nordics.
We are collaborating with them on another project, and we are discussing with different Nordics institutions, but also studios to have them join the working group.
Okay, perfect. And I see Irene is also following up already, inviting you to join powers to collaborate in Friedrichstadt end of October. But I guess, Irene, you can contact Ecoprod directly, and I'm sure they will be more than happy to see if you can find some ways to collaborate.
Yes,
Right?
we'd be happy. And we didn't put our email address, but our email address is you can join us both at international@ecoprod.com.
Okay, perfect. And there is a question from Maria. She's asking about certification. So if you are planning to certificate productions which are following the strategies that you have been describing, she is completely right. There are in open calls, at least for Creative Europe, and there are more and more points dedicated to sustainability and greening. So it's very important also for producers from this point of view to basically be able to satisfy the financiers on this area as well. So back to the question, do you plan on certificating productions?
Yes, this is what I presented towards the end with the European Sustainability Animation Standards. The goal is to have this list of actions, and then studios or projects could get certified by getting an independent audit company looking at what they implemented. So this is really the goal. It will be an ongoing and a bit long, like midterm progress. I think will need at least 1 year to get to that certification, but that's really our goal with this international working group. And we are also discussing this topic with Creative Europe and with Eurimages and with the different financiers that finance animation, because we have seen that there are more and more sustainability criteria in the funding applications, which is great news because it shows that institutions are taking this topic seriously and want the industry to act. But as we mentioned, there are not enough tools and knowledge about the animation industry. So for now, what is happening is we are kind of using live action tools and live action standards and putting them or using them for the animation industry, which can work for some topics. For example, transportation will stay the same. Everything related to food, of course, will remain the same. But as we said during this whole presentation, there's not enough focus on the digital aspect of animation. Of course, we are talking here about 2D and 3D. And so this is really the goal of this international working group.
That's perfect. Also, to kind of echo what you are saying, because this being green and sustainable, it's not only like in business choices and changing cars for trains, but it feels like this is really, really a lot of topics and ideas to think about. So I'm guessing it will, like, to make it work perfectly, it would be really good to be able to have like a green commissioner for every, or green manager, to become like a regular part of the team in the production studios, which is of course a big ask. So we hope that also the financiers will maybe here see the opportunity to dedicate extra funding for this, because now it's a bit in reality that making all these trainings and choices, of course it's not for free, so it's taking money away from development or production, which is not the best, but of course very needed. So I hope there will also be thing in this or change in this, that the financiers will dedicate extra funding for this important implementation. We have more questions. There is Gergely asking, did you have the opportunity to test the media carbon calculator? What is your opinion in relation to the animation industry?
Yes, so the European Commission with the media project, they have been commissioning a carbon calculator, which is right now being tested by the industry. It's from what I understood, mostly focused on live action, and it's going to be a very basic calculator. From what they said, I'm not working for them, so it's difficult for me to present that calculator. I think I don't think it's specifically thought about for the animation industry, but maybe it can also be used for the animation industry.
Yeah, I guess this is also a challenge, like which tools, calculators to choose to work with. But I hear that there is like a strong support for this, the one that you mentioned, the carbulator.
Yes. Maybe to make you understand why, like, carbon calculator is really just a tool, because to measure the impact, because I also saw that somebody was saying that it's very time consuming, which I agree with. But the carbon calculator is really just a tool. So the way the tool works is that you enter activity data, so you travel, your energy consumption into that tool, and the tool calculates how much carbon emissions have been emitted by your activities. And the whole point of a tool, I would say, is to help you find the right data, and also help you make this process of data collection, which is very long and very it's a lot of work. And the goal of carbon calculator is also to help you make this aspect of data collection easier and faster. So it's about asking the right questions, so that you don't need to look at every computer and how much energy that computer uses. So it's an ongoing project. Calculators are getting better and better, and also taking into account the feedback from the users. And the goal is really to make that easier, because the goal, of course, is not to measure only, it's to reduce. So our focus should really be on reducing, and measuring is only there to help us understand what has the biggest impact, because otherwise it's difficult to know where we need to highlight our efforts and where we need to act in priority. So measuring is really about understanding the size of our impacts, and then also it helps us navigate the roadmap, because when you do, for example, the footprint of your studio every year or every 2 years, then you can also see how much you've reduced.
Exactly. Thank you for this explanation. I'm sorry, I think I had some connection problems when you started the answering. So I don't know if you already touched this Teams question, which is kind of similar. So it's the idea, do you have an idea of the relative importance of the animation workflow in comparison with the overall impact of the studio? So travel, building, commuting.
Yes, actually, this is also why it's important to measure our footprint, and some studio did that. So I shared a slide. Maybe we can show it on screen from a studio. So it's a cyber group studio. They conducted a carbon footprint to identify the different impacts. I don't know if you can see here. Yes. So here you can see that purchases and services have the biggest impact compared to the others when calculated by employee. It really depends also on the kind of studio, the kind of production. So that's why also it's important to measure by studio. But here you can see that yes, so basically things related to infrastructures and and to workflows have the biggest impact?
For now, we only have some footprints of some studios, but we don't have industry data. So for now, it's difficult to draw conclusions for the whole industry from the data that we have, because we need more footprints to be able to say what has the biggest impact in the animation industry on average.
Exactly. So a very big task in front of all of us. Next is connected concern by Annika, that she finds filling out environmental calculators very time consuming, since they are not specific to animation. Of course, we agree, and this is where we hope Ecoprod with Alissa and Adrien will help us to make it tailor-made for our needs.
Just maybe to
Yes.
clarify,
Yeah.
Calculator
Sure.
is not Ecoprod's tool. We are partners of this tool, but it has been developed by Anime France. Just to clarify.
Yeah, thank you. And a comment from Irene about carbon compensation for the necessary flight travels you need on production. We have invested in reforestation projects in both Madagascar and France. Hope to inspire others to do the same. Yes, very, very impressive. It's I think there are a lot of this kind of initiatives that you can take part, and a lot of events are getting the green certifications and dedicating parts of income to green and sustainable actions, which is of course very commendable.
On carbon compensation, it's really important to stress that the first step is to reduce the emissions as much as possible, and then you can compensate what is left, because we always will need to consume energy and to drive around and fly maybe for projects. But the first step is really reducing, because if you are only measuring and compensating, that's not sustainability. It's really measuring, reducing, and then compensating at the end. And what the second recommendation would also be to really look at the projects that you are working with for your compensation, to make sure that it's serious projects, that it's long-term projects, because we have seen some companies that have been investing in forests, but have not been taking care of the forest over the time, so the forests are not growing and so not compensating our emissions. So it's really important to work with serious partners, but I'm sure Irene has done that. Yeah, exactly. There are not many initiatives that are transparent, so it's important to be careful with this.
All right. I think we are slowly getting to the end of the discussion. I had some questions prepared, but they were actually about the certification and the green commissioners, so I feel we already covered that part as well. But also, I would like to stress one more time that Ecoprod, Alissa and Adrien, you are very approachable and very ready, basically, to help all the companies tackle this in their own studios, in their own companies. And of course, so don't forget to follow, to take initiative, to be part of it, because in the end of the day, it's a responsibility from all of us to participate and to make our future better and more green, let's say. We're also super happy to say that we are collaborating with Ecoprod, and we will be doing at least one more training this year, and hopefully much more in the future. So very happy to be aligned with you and to connect in this. And I don't know, maybe like last words for everybody watching us. If not, then review this again, download the guide, and take initiative and be part of it.
I would say last word would be, don't try to be perfect. If you don't have time to measure, then don't measure and just act on what you know has an impact, which we basically know. It's reduce your energy consumption, reduce the purchasing of high emitting equipment, and look for low carbon alternatives when traveling. I think those are the three main things, and just do the best that you can. And the idea is to get better over time. But we really need to act now, and every step counts to reduce our impact.
Exactly. Thank you so much. It was a pleasure listening to you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very
Have
much.
a great day.